Greetings, YouTube. Reverse discrimination does not exist. Now, before you start typing furiously and telling me your anecdotic stories about how it does, let me elaborate. And you knew I was going to elaborate, didn't you? For an act of discrimination to take place, a person or group in power must be discriminating against a person or group that is not in power. So, the discriminator must have fiscal, political, or social power over the target of their discrimination. So in America, for example, it would be a discriminatory act for a white person to say all plaid people are evil. That is an act of discrimination. Now, if plaid people say all white people are evil, that isn't an act of discrimination, it is an act of bigotry. And there's a difference. Bigotry doesn't really have any power behind it. It's person's opinions. Now, they could act upon that bigotry through crime or violence, and that's a crime or violence that is fueled by bigotry. And potentially, it could be a hate crime if their goal is to intimidate the group in question. So if a group of plaid people decide to become terrorists and attack white people, they could be construed as a hate crime if their goal was to attack them simply because they're white. But that still isn't an act of discrimination. For an act of discrimination, it must be a group with power discriminating against a group that doesn't have power. Which means in America, even though they make up half of the population, women cannot reverse discriminate against men. They can commit an act of misandry, they can be bigoted, they can hold prejudicial attitudes about men. But because women do not hold the same fiscal, political, and social power that males do in America, or the West in general, or actually in the world at large, I don't know of any country in the world where women have more power than men, and few where they have equal power to men. Excuse me. I seem to have hair on my nose. It happens when you have cats. They can still do those things. I mean, bigotry, prejudicial attitudes, misandry. But it can't be an act of discrimination because they don't have the same economic, political, or social power as do men. Now, yes, men are going to come out here and tell me that that's not true, and you're entitled to that opinion. But the reality is that the Western culture, and actually the world at large, women hold a lower level of economic, political, and social power. There are areas where they have made that different in the West. You could say that women have more power in custody battles. And in America, for example, that would be true. It isn't true in every country. And that is a reversal against the idea of the past where men got the custody of children traditionally. And the fact that women are stereotyped into being the best of the two parents to take care of children is also a byproduct of the patriarchy and is an act of discrimination in and of itself. You're stereotyping those women. You're saying women make better mothers, better parents than do fathers. Actually, women make better mothers than fathers, probably. Fathers do, probably. But that women make better parents than men do. That's not true. Women can be good parents. Fathers can be good parents. You know, but when you automatically say that one of these two individuals can do it better than the other, that's an act of discrimination. That's an act of bigotry. That's an act of prejudice. Sorry. And I know this is going to be a controversial concept, that discrimination is a one-way street, but it is. That's the way it works. It's when a group in power discriminates against a group that is not in power. And of course, my favorite example is the plaid people, because the plaid people don't exist. So it's a useful mechanism for me to talk about discrimination without targeting a particular ethnicity or gender or social strata or whatever. I can just say plaid people, and you get the point. But the plaid people could be anyone in America or the world. They could be an ethnic minority in a country where they're only 10% of the population. They could be the LGBTQ community because they only make up 10% of the population. They could be black people in America, who make up, I think, is it 12 to 15% of the population in America? I'm not positive. The Asian community in America, which is even a lower number than that, I believe. The Native American population, which is smaller than the white population now. Now, that isn't always going to be so. America is becoming more and more diverse, and the percentage of the population that is purely Caucasian is shrinking. Now, eventually, there will be a bunch of groups in America that all have different percentages, but no one particular one will have as much power as currently the Caucasians do. This terrifies some people in America. The people who are suffering from privilege distress are terrified that the ethnic group they belong to, the Caucasians, shall someday no longer be in power. And of course, my argument in response to that attitude is make sure that you set up a system of civil liberties and human rights so that when you are no longer in power, the system is set up so that you cannot be oppressed. Which, additionally, would make sure that no one else could be oppressed by you, who's currently in power. Which is one of the reasons we haven't done these things. Because the people who are currently in power enjoy oppressing others. And even though they are terrified of the moment in the future where they will no longer be able to oppress others, they are equally terrified of setting up a system where everyone is treated the same under the law. So they're working against themselves, and eventually they're going to screw themselves. And I'm hoping that we fix this system before that happens. Because I don't want anyone to be oppressed in America or the West or the world. I want all of us treated equally under the law. I want all of us to be in a situation where discrimination cannot take place legally. Which is why I oppose the Libertarian Party's stance on civil liberties and their love of the concept that they should be able to slap up whites-only signs in every store in America, because that's okay. That private property has more importance than civil liberties. So, these have been my thoughts on the concept that discrimination is a one-way street. That reverse sexism or reverse discrimination, or whatever you want to call it, cannot happen. Discrimination is about those in power oppressing those who don't have power. That's what it's always been. That's what it always will be. It doesn't excuse prejudice and bigotry, misandry. But it does define things a little better to my mind. And I think having solid definitions, understanding what you're talking about, is really important.